Every single morning we make a choice. What am I going to wear? A red shirt, maybe some blue jeans, that dress with the cool pattern. It feels so simple, right? But behind every single color, every pattern, there's this hidden world of science, art, and just massive industry. But have you ever really stopped and looked at your favorite t-shirt and wondered, how did this get so blue? Or how are the stripes on that shirt so perfectly straight? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and get into exactly how our clothes get their amazing colors. So it turns out pretty much every colored piece of clothing you own started its life by going down one of two main paths. First, you've got dyeing. Think of this like diving into a swimming pool of color, total immersion. The whole piece of material gets one uniform, solid color. The other path is printing. This is way more targeted, kind of like using a stencil or a stamp to put a specific design in a specific place. So dye or print, that's the first big decision. All right, let's dive into that first path, dyeing. Now, what's really fascinating here isn't just how they dye the fabric, but when they do it. The timing is absolutely everything, and depending on when you add the color, you get a completely different look and feel in the final product. Basically, there are four key moments where you can jump in and add color. You can dye the raw fibers, like before they're even spun into thread. You can dye the yarn itself after it's been spun. You could wait until the yarn is woven into a whole sheet of fabric and then dye that. Or, believe it or not, you can wait until the t-shirt is completely sewn together and then dye the entire finished garment. And you can totally see the results in your own closet. You know that cozy, heathered gray look in your favorite sweater? That's from dyeing the raw fibers first. They mix different colored fibers together before spinning the yarn. Classic plaid or striped shirts? Those are made by weaving different colored pre-dyed yarns together to create the pattern. Your everyday solid colored t-shirt? Almost always that's what's called piece dyed, where they dye the whole roll of fabric at once for efficiency. And that super soft, casual lived-in vibe you see in a lot of clothes, that's often from garment dyeing. Okay, so let's switch gears to the second path, printing. If dyeing is all about that solid, uniform color, printing is where we get the personality, the art. And the story of printing is really a story of technology, from ancient hands-on crafts all the way to mind-blowing digital precision. I mean, it all started with things like block printing, where actual artists would hand carve these incredible wooden blocks for every single color in a design. So beautiful, but incredibly slow. Then the Industrial Revolution gave us screen printing, which pushes ink through a mesh screen. This was an absolute game changer for making clothes for everybody. And now we have digital printing, which works just like the inkjet printer on your desk, letting us create designs with unlimited colors and insane detail, basically on demand. And of course, there are other huge players in the game. For those massive runs of repeating patterns, think about wallpaper or rolls and rolls of fashion fabric. Rotary screen printing is king. It's basically screen printing supercharged onto a giant high-speed cylinder. And what about those super sharp, almost photorealistic pictures you see on athletic wear? That's usually heat transfer printing, where the design is printed on special paper first and then basically ironed on with heat and pressure. But printing is so much more than just flat patterns. This is where the real magic comes in. We're talking about adding shine, adding texture, stuff you can not only see, but actually feel. For example, you've got foil printing for that bright, metallic shine. There's flock printing, which gives the fabric a soft, velvety feel. There's even a really clever process called discharge printing, where you use a chemical to actually remove the color from a dyed shirt to create your design. And yeah, of course you've seen glow-in-the-dark prints everywhere. The possibilities are just awesome. So we've talked about how we get color onto our clothes. But what about the what? What is this stuff, this color, actually made of? Well, it's not just a simple pigment. It's all about chemistry. You have to play matchmaker and pair the right kind of dye with the right kind of fabric, or the color just won't stick. And here's the key thing to remember. Different fabrics have different chemical personalities. So natural fibers like cotton, they absolutely love reactive dyes. These dyes form a super strong chemical bond, which is why your cotton tees hold their color so well in the wash. But synthetics, like polyester, they're basically a type of plastic, so they need special dispersed dyes that bond using heat. Wool and silk need acid dyes for those rich, vibrant colors. And that iconic blue in your jeans, that comes from a whole special class called vat dyes, using the legendary indigo. Okay, so the color is finally on the fabric. The job's done, right? Not quite. The journey isn't over. Now comes the crucial part, making sure that color is high quality, that it's going to last, and more, that it was all done in a responsible way.
This is where quality control is so important. They test for color fastness to make sure the color won't bleed all over your other clothes in the wash or rub off on your skin. They check for perfect shade matching so all 10,000 blue shirts they make actually look like the same blue shirt. And they check for compliance with safety standards like Okotex to make sure there are no nasty, harmful chemicals left on your clothes. And that last point about safety has really exploded into a much bigger conversation. Let's be honest, the textile industry has a huge environmental footprint, and traditional dyeing and printing use a ton of water and can cause a lot of pollution. But thankfully, things are really starting to change, and sustainability is now a central part of how we think about color.
And we're seeing some absolutely incredible innovations pop up. There's this huge resurgence of natural dyes made from things like plants and minerals. There are new technologies that can dye fabrics using foam or even just air instead of massive amounts of water. We already talked about how digital printing cuts down on waste, and there's a huge push for safer chemistry, like azo-free dyes, which get rid of some potentially harmful stuff. So from that one simple choice, dye or print, every piece of clothing goes on this wild journey through chemistry, technology, and art. It's a story of old-school tradition and brand-new innovation. The next time you get dressed, just take an extra second to look at that color, at that pattern, because now you know a little bit more of its story. So what story will your clothes tell you?